Let's talk the A-Word series 2. Where to start? It's just... I think it's pretty obvious I'm not going to be able to talk about absolutely everything, so I think let's just focus down on some of the key things, and then maybe we'll take the conversation further on a live show or something. But the things I really want to get out there. See, I say I loved the first series. I really did. Let's say I loved it this much. I loved this series. Whether that's just because it's something close to my heart, I don't know. But if I'm completely honest, I think you don't have to have a relationship to autism to enjoy this show. So obviously, spoilers, because... yeah. The first series was all about finding out that Joe was autistic and how everyone reacted to that. This series was more about how people were reacting to Joe as he moves through life. I think this series is actually a lot less about autism than the first one was. A great TV show has characters which all of them are really kind of padded out. They've all got their own story. This is a show that does that. Obviously Joe we know a lot about, even down to people like Ramesh, some little kid. He had his own character and everything was so well done. But my three favourite characters, let's be fair, the obvious one, Christopher Eccleston as Morris. Obviously that Doctor Who fan will always have a soft spot for Christopher Eccleston, but generally Morris is just hilarious. He's a bit of comic relief. And then another favourite character of mine is Paul, purely because of the difference we see between Paul in the first series and the second series. Paul was the one in the first series that was all accepting and everything, and then in this one he's having some midlife crisis. Like, especially towards the end of the series, it started to really get out of hand, didn't it? The character I really want to speak about is Mark. Yes, I'm absolutely gutted still that I didn't get to play Mark, but I'm over that now. But the world works in its brilliant ways, and Travis, who played him, was so perfect. This character meant so much more than just being someone who's 16 or an autistic. This was an autistic character played by an autistic actor, which is something that just hasn't happened properly. I can gather that Travis was actually playing someone that's probably slightly different to him on this in terms of autism wise, just to have that representation there. When Jared Groves interviewed Christopher Eccleston said, in the show they have someone playing an autistic character, they have an autistic person playing an autistic character, and they have someone with Down syndrome playing a character. This is representation. This is what we need in media, and this is what needs to be echoed throughout the entirety of media. But Travis, if you end up watching this, I'm going to send it to your mum, because I know your mum watched the last one. Well done. Seriously, well done, and thank you for delivering something which was just so meaningful for everyone on the spectrum. I hope I'm speaking on behalf of everyone else. Looking at this series as a whole, there are elements in it that weren't perhaps quite accurate, like how quickly Joe got into that school. That wouldn't have happened in real life. Obviously for television purposes they had to speed that up. I love how well padded with information the show was. I do a lot with the National Autistic Society. I know very much how they work, and because they worked with the people creating the show, there's various bits in the actual show that you can go, NAS did that's NAS. You can tell that that's what's at the core. This show wants to be accurate. Lee Ingleby, playing Paul, he had no relation to autism beforehand. I think he said he had a couple of autistic friends, but to then become an ambassador of the National Autistic Society, Lee became that amazed and just warmed by the world of autism that he's now an ambassador for a charity, which is incredible. And Lee, if you're watching this, I'm hoping you are. Again, just thank you so much for just being so interested in what a lot of people aren't. It's not that people aren't interested, it's just that people haven't had the opportunity to be interested. So thank you for being part of that movement. And this is what the A-Word's doing brilliantly. It's just opening up autism to so many more people. This show does something very clever. What it does is it implements autistic traits into every single one of the main characters. So you've got Nicola with her very bluntness, you've got Alison with her colour coding of post-it notes, you've got Morris who just says it like it is, the old man that's stuck in his ways. All traits of the autistic spectrum but spread out. This is what's great about autism, and what I find so fascinating about it. It's the most human condition. There is that saying, everyone's on the spectrum. I don't like that saying, I must admit, but that's people showing that they can relate to autism in some way. It's not at all, it's just that people tend to have various traits that are associated with autism. This show is allowing people to relate to autism, and it's not as taboo anymore. It's not as taboo as it was however many years ago. In terms of the direction of the series, it became very complicated, Paul being the central part of that. Well, for me anyway, that's what I focused on. Towards the end, it got very overwhelming in terms of emotions. I picked up on two very key things in the last episode. Joe walking off when Ramesh was talking to him. Ramesh was just asking him question after question after question, and Joe just walked off like, God, no. And then when Mark and Paul were having that deep chat, and as soon as Paul said that he wasn't alright, that's when Mark was just like, I need to go, overwhelmed by emotion. And that's actually how I felt during the show. Like, I don't know if it had this effect on everyone else watching it. Maybe it's just because I'm autistic. I actually had to turn the show off out there. I had to take a bit of a break because I was finding it all very emotionally stressful and overwhelming. I then returned to it 20 minutes later after I had a bit of a... I hope that was something done on purpose, because there was emotions flying from every single character, really high, intense emotion, which is one thing I can't cope with. So I hope that was done on purpose to try and replicate how emotionally challenging life can be. One thing we have to just talk about, that moment of Morris, when he collapsed, I was genuinely like, I got really anxious. Like I had to remember, oh, it's a TV show, Connor, but I didn't feel like that at the time. My heart started like really beating. I was thinking afterwards, oh, how funny would it have been if it boom, boom, da, 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 da. Wrong BBC show. That just added to the emotional overwhelmingness of the entire thing. So as challenging as it was to watch, I hope it did what it needed to do for neurotypicals watching. Maybe I'm completely off with that one, I don't know. Going forward, obviously we end with that scene where Alison and Paul look at each other. Alison smiles, so I thought, oh, cool, they're fine. But then they started changing looks, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on. We're not sure where Alison and Paul are at. When I see the opening of Series 3, if there is going to be one, there should be one, there really should be one. I want to see that Alison and Paul are still together. I agree with Eddie, I can't imagine them not being together. Like Nicola and Eddie, I can cope with being apart. Alison and Paul have just got to be. Speaking of another couple, Morris and Louise, I think Pookie Quinzel is an incredible actress. I've seen her in, Waterloo Road, Class, and this. And I love the dynamic between those two. Anyway, distraction. Alison and Paul need to get back together. Please, please, please. And then also, what would I like to see represented? Well, I said this when I talked about Atypical, but I feel a lot better approaching it with this because I know the show is more embracing. We need more of autism represented, quite simply, because Mark was at a different place on the spectrum to Joe. Maybe he was at the same place kind of years on, but I'd like to see more kind of my range of the spectrum. Of course I would. But the other thing to point out, they're both white males. I know I'm not helping that situation, but still. So I'd love to see more autistic people brought into that. Females, people from other races. That aside, of course I'm going to say this, you know that support group that Alison went to? I really think they could do with someone who does public speaking, perhaps like 20 years old, who does talks, yeah. Just saying, my email address is in the description. I know, obviously I fit the mould of plain white male, but I just love this series so much, oh my god. Even if I just had a cameo in the background, like, life would be made. This series has just been incredible, like, there's no other way to put it. It's so much better than the first series, even though the first series was amazing itself, and it represents so much for people with autism and the families of autism, and it comes from a very good place. Like, with Atypical, it comes from the place of, we can make money out of autism. This is very much, right, let's actually try and educate at the same time. One thing I'm going to link below is the National Autistic Society's website, because they've done a lot with the A word. Like, there's been various cast Twitter Q&As and stuff like that, and there's loads to go and check out. If I ever meet any of the cast, which I'm hoping I will at some point, I'm sure some of us, our paths will cross at some point. If I ever meet anyone who's worked on the show, I'm going to be so grateful. I'm just going to want to thank them, and if any of you are watching this, just thank you for making something which is just so meaningful. Cheesy and cringy, but it's doing the job. It's doing the job. You know, this is the reason I do this on the internet. I want people to have a better understanding, and you're doing that on such a bigger scale, so thank you. I could go on about the show forever, but I think I'm going to leave it there. Let's really discuss in the comments, what were your favourite bits, what bits did you think weren't quite autistically accurate, what would you like to see in Series 3? There's so much to be discussing, so let's discuss it down below. I'll try and be as involved as in the comments as possible. I am, however, trying to finish an assignment, which once I've done this, I can have a little bit of a break for Christmas, well, kind of. Although I definitely won't be answering comments tomorrow morning, because I will be in the cinema seeing The Last Jedi. Getting too excited. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.